Hello, my name is Jessie Junko Beardsley, and I am a custom bridal designer. And I've been having a lot of conversations with brides this week, so I figured that I would post a video and kind of talk about my process, who I make dresses for, and why I make dresses. Generally, I do about four custom wedding dresses a year, and I like to work with the bride for about a year leading up to that process. So I book quite a bit ahead, and currently it's March 2021 right now, and I may have a small opening for um, a simple dress or a vintage redesign dress this coming fall, but I'm probably not really available for a custom gown. Doesn't have to be a wedding dress, but a custom gown until spring of 2022. So as we're looking forward to having weddings again and gathering and actually making wedding dresses, I would love to have more conversations. The first step is always to book a style consultation with me where we just have a conversation on Zoom and talk about what you're looking for. That is a really fun part of the process, and the designing is definitely my most favorite part. But it's a really interesting process that I've been working on for years, and it's changed a lot, and it's always changing. I'm going to just for the sake of conversation continue to say custom bride, but please know that that doesn't mean only women, and it certainly doesn't mean only wedding dresses. It does mean mostly only dresses. I do some like vests and jackets, but for the most part I work with women or female identifying folk and create custom gowns. And it's really the most fun thing that I do. I love doing it. I studied fashion design and marketing in college, and I kind of always made custom clothing. And um, out of college, I realized that I didn't want to work for somebody else. And there were a lot of things about the fashion industry in general that I really didn't subscribe to or believe in. And I really didn't want to be a part of. So I just kind of continued to do some freelance work here and there and went on with my life. And I will certainly never forget the first time that somebody approached me about making their wedding dress. It was an email that I received while I was traveling, and it was so touching. And I had never really considered it. I had dreamed of making wedding dresses and making just women feel beautiful. Um, but I that wasn't a part of my offerings at the time, and somebody reached out and asked me, and it was definitely a pivotal moment in my life and my career as a designer and a maker. So, like I said, the initial conversation is where we start, but first and foremost, I create custom wedding dresses for women who want to be comfortable on their wedding day. And of course, also look beautiful. Sometimes a custom bride that I work with is looking for something very specific that they just can't find in the store. That's where a lot of custom fashion is birthed from, just necessity and having zero options that really fulfill that thing that you're looking for. Um, some some brides really just want something in a certain style with some like certain parameters, but they don't exactly know what they're looking for, and they really want somebody like me to make something creative and artistic and interesting and unique and special just for them. And some custom brides really just want something that fits their bodies perfectly. And that certainly doesn't mean fitted all the way through. And one of the things that's really important to me is creating clothing that fits a body, not asking a body to fit into a dress or a garment. Um, and that process is magical, and sometimes it takes a long time. Um, there are it always feels kind of magic to me when I go from just like a short list of numbers that are your body measurements, and sizes are just numbers. I know that it can feel really hard to look at a certain number on a dress or a pant size, and I hate that. I just like none of that clothing was ever made for you. None of that clothing was ever made for somebody's body. Like it was made for a person, an ideal that literally doesn't exist. So that's one thing that I wish that I could just erase from every woman's mind is that your body is not a number and it is not a size and it is not imperfect in any way, shape, or form. It is exactly what it should be. And I know that sometimes when you are engaged in considering your wedding dress and all of these fun and exciting details, um, there's sometimes a race to lose some weight, and your fiance loves you exactly how you are, and your partner is in love with you, and your body size is definitely not something that should be of a big concern. I love the human body. I love the female body. It is complicated. And as I said, like just going from a few numbers, a few measurements that really mean very little, and turning that into first a pattern and then cutting that out of flat fabric and then starting to sew it into a functional garment is just a really magical process. And I like to think that I put a little bit of extra magic and love into that too. Um, so when we sit down for a style consultation during the pandemic, I've been doing it via Zoom, and we'll continue to do that for a while. It's pretty convenient, and that in-person feel certainly isn't completely there, but we can definitely take care of a lot of the initial details before getting to measurements through a conversation. Some of the things that I like to ask a bride is definitely about their relationship and their partner and their love. I like to learn about your personal style, and I'm really interested in your wedding details. I think that good design in anything is kind of reflected through all of the other components to the event. So I like to know what time you're getting married, if these are details that you know already, what type of an environment it is, if you're indoors, outdoors, if you have a bridal party, if you know what your partner is going to be wearing, if you have colors, and just like the full style is really fun for me to learn about. I think that can really help me create a piece of clothing that is going to be just made specifically for that beautiful day and for that beautiful body. So knowing those things, and also I like to know like what about your body and clothing you do and do not like. And I'll use some words like woven and knit and soft and shiny, and I try to like keep my language understandable, but sometimes there's just things about clothing and fashion that you like do or don't know how to articulate, but it's really important for me to try and have that conversation with you and to go through it and try and figure it out. One of the first questions that a bride does want to know is how much a custom wedding dress costs. And I know that that's a really important question, and I can't really answer it until we've had a pretty like significant conversation and looked at the timeline and talked about expectations. I will tell you that I'm really good at working within a budget. There are lots of ways that I can work to minimize a cost if that is the objective. Certain fabrics are easier to work with as far as creating a pattern and actually creating the garment itself. So I can just put parameters to keep us within a budget, but generally the answer to how much does a custom wedding dress made by me cost is between $200 and $2,000, with most of my brides resting in around the $1,000 mark. And again, taking several months to work together. Fittings really do need to be done in person. If you don't live in the Finger Lakes area, um, you will need to come visit, and that seems like a fun excuse and we can we can get away with a couple of fittings depending on the like the technical design aspects of the dress. But I like to have several fittings, and that's just like how we fine tune the fit and make sure that you are fully satisfied and fully clear about everything going forward with every step of the process. I do not make wedding dresses or custom gowns that already exist. So if there's something that you saw in a store and you love, you should definitely buy that dress. And I can't make it any cheaper or in a different color or with a slightly different fit. That's just not how I work. Um, I can do couture techniques, and I can do corseting and boning. It isn't my general preference or style. As I said, I like a bride that's comfortable, but I do also understand that sometimes that structure does help you stay comfortable in your gown on your wedding day. So all of these are flexible and really interesting and fun ideas for me to talk about. Like I said, I do sometimes work with people who want me to have some artistic freedom, and I love being able to do some of the designing myself, but together we are really co designing your dream dress. And that is such an honor for me to be able to be a part of such an important day and serve you in this way. It's really something that brings me an immense amount of joy, and I'm really, really proud of the work that I've done and continue to do. So, as a co designer of your wedding dress, you kind of get a crash course in designing. And that's kind of why I'm making this video, I guess, so that you can get like a little bit of a heads up of what it looks like, what the process looks like. So, as I mentioned earlier, I am also a pattern drafter and a draper. So, I use lots of different techniques to create the pattern. And traditionally, with this type of a process, a dress is made out of muslin as a prototype or a sample. And I sometimes use muslin, but I also oftentimes use other materials that I have on hand that feel a little bit more interesting and also create something that could possibly be worn in a different capacity in the future rather than having a lot of um, like muslin dresses that aren't going to be used for anything. I am a sustainable designer, and I really like to make sure that everything that I'm working on has a future that isn't the landfill, of course. Not that I would ever throw away a sample, but this way somebody else might be able to wear it. And we always talk about that. And I always get approval and clearance from the people that I work with if they are interested in a prototype or a sample being finished. I'm happy to offer that to them also. So we do we do the design conversation. If I can, if I'm presented with the opportunity, I love creating sketches or some type of a presentation. I've done some embroidery, and I love being able to show you visually a design idea that I have for you with you. And then from there, we can pick and choose elements that we like and don't like, and really just like talk it through until we have a nice, clear plan. And then from that plan, we take measurements and I make a pattern and make a prototype. And the prototype is almost never a fully finished garment. It can be, and it just is a way to keep the cost minimized and to not waste any of our precious time together. So we do usually what we do is a fitting with the prototype, and then make some adjustments. I'll go back and make some adjustments to the pattern if there were any style ideas that had changed in the meantime. We talk about that and adjust for that, and then I make a sample, which again would be in something that I have on hand that might be fun or funky. Um, or sometimes a muslin. And this will be a closer to finished garment, but still not necessarily a fully finished garment. I'll often have a neckline or a hemline that isn't finished. And again, just to save some time and some money. Um, Sometimes the sampling process goes through a couple of different attempts, and that really just depends on how complicated of a design we're working on. And I have been really good at figuring out what I can and can't do, and I am very honest and straightforward with my abilities and my time management. So I am a wedding dress designer, but I'm also a lot of other things, and that's why I like to give myself a year for something that is really, really high end and really well thought through. So sometimes the dress is made up to 4 times before we actually get to the final fabric, and that is a process that's also really interesting and really fun to have you a part of if you're interested in it. Sometimes you a bride may not have a really clear idea of the fabrics, and it's really hard to decide without feeling those. So we order what's called swatches, which are usually small pieces of fabric that we would be considering to use. And um, I have lots of sources that I love using, and I'm also very happy to let the bride take the driver's seat in that situation and, you know, do some sourcing yourself and do some fabric shopping yourself. And if you're doing that locally, I'm happy to do that with you. And it's definitely a very important part. And knowing what kind of fabric we're going to be using as a final fabric is important to know before we really get into the sample making. So figuring out the fabrics is fun, and feeling everything, looking at everything, making these decisions. Usually when I present a bride with designs and swatches, I like to say, here is everything. These are lots of options. You don't need to make any decisions right now. Sometimes it's really easy to make that decision. I also like to encourage brides to welcome anybody else into the process with them if they're interested in having their mother or mother-in-law or best friend, bridesmaids, partner, or whatever the case may be. If you want somebody else involved in this process, and if you want to have another set of eyes and ears and some more influence on it, that's definitely welcomed. I am recording this video today in my home-based studio, which is in Hector, right off of 414. And this space is definitely, I've outgrown this space for private consultations, but I have been working with some wonderful local folks who are welcoming us into their Airbnbs when they are not fully booked. So generally, I can have a nice, comfortable space in Hector to do these fittings that's private. I also co-own Hector Handmade, which is a gift shop and gallery that features only the work of locally made of local artists. And some of my work is there, and I co-own it with my best friend, and her work is there also. And as I said, it's only local artists who are featured there. And I've done fittings there, and we'll probably continue to do some there. But in that like situation, what I would do is rearrange the gift shop a little bit and set up a dressing room to do some fittings. But the style consultation in off hours would be an appropriate place for that too, if you wanted to come in and talk in person. I have a couple of portfolio books that show some of the dresses that I've made in the past and a little bit of the designing and the process. And I really love just keeping it wide open to whatever possibilities there may be. I try not to make any assumptions about you and your style, and I really love seeing how this magic happens and how it unfolds. I also like to Facebook or Instagram stalk you if you have either of those social media accounts. Getting a good look at what your personal style is what I'm looking for. And it's really interesting to me to see the images of yourself that you put out into the world. And I think that those are really valuable and really important. And I love it if somebody that I'm working with on a custom gown shares with me images of themselves that they like in clothing that they like, even if it's nothing like what we're going to make. Other than the like soup to nuts completely custom gown goes, another offer that I work on that I really, really love doing is something that I call vintage redesign, where we work with an existing garment and it doesn't necessarily even have to be a garment that fits you. So if there is a family heirloom or a just a just a cool old dress or something that you want to incorporate into a new piece, that's a really, really fun project. And those usually start at $250. So that's also a faster project and a less expensive project. Vintage redesign, really, really interesting, really beautiful, and really, really special. And I love talking about all of the possibilities. So if you are interested in talking more about your personal style, your wedding style, and or your wedding dress, I would love to get connected with you. So just leave me a comment. And like I said, it's definitely not just custom wedding dresses that I do. It is custom gowns in general for people who are looking for something that is comfortable and beautiful and really special, just like you.